Dementia Researcher with a blog and a rating.
The final year of a PhD is scary for many reasons. All of your hard work is coming to an end, you have to write a very long book, and there can be lots of uncertainty about what's next. For me, the what's next was always scary. So many thoughts would constantly run around my head, such as how and when will I be able to get a job? So I thought in this blog, I'd write about how to find postdoc jobs. Disclaimer, I know not everyone who does a PhD wants to stay in academia, and the idea of doing a postdoc to some people is awful. But early on in my PhD, I knew I wanted to do one. As hard as my PhD has been, it has also been such a wonderful experience, and I know I'm so lucky to have had such a good experience. I'm not saying it wasn't hard. At some points, it was so challenging, but the knowledge and skills I've learned and the people I've had the privilege to meet and work with have all made it worthwhile. Okay, so back to postdoc jobs. There are a number of questions you should ask yourself when thinking about the postdoc job. What do you want to research? i.e., do you want to stay similar to your PhD work or widen your research focus? What skills do you want to gain? And where do you want to do one? I wrote a previous blog considering some of these questions, but this one is focused on the practicalities of finding one. Okay, so when do you start looking for a postdoc job? So I don't think there is any fast or hard rule on this, and I think it is impacted by where in the world you are looking to go and be a postdoc. From my own experience and speaking to others, people usually suggest you start looking as early as 1 year prior to finishing up your PhD. 1 year can seem quite early, but if you are wanting to move across the world for a job, it's important to start making those connections early to show that you may be interested in joining that lab. See the next section for info on how to contact potential PIs. Big moves can take a while, and if you are wanting to join a specific lab and there is no current money, then you may be able to apply for fellowships to work in those specific labs. If this is the route you decide to take, these can take time. So where can you find postdoc jobs? So I would say that Twitter is one of the best places to find postdoc jobs. Lots of labs, when they have funding, do post the job adverts on Twitter. So make sure you're following the labs you are interested in and keep an eye out for those important adverts. There are also a number of websites you can go to find postdoc jobs, and these include jobs.ac.uk. This website not only gives you job opportunities within the UK, but also around the world. And you can filter it to specific areas of the world and specific fields, which is pretty helpful. You can also find postdoc jobs on the Dementia Researcher website. The Dementia Researcher website not only has many helpful blogs and podcasts about postdoc jobs, but it also advertises them too. And you can also go on the Johns Hopkins postdoc funding spreadsheet. This is something I came across on Twitter. Thank you, Twitter. It's basically a huge spreadsheet for neuroscience-related postdoc funding. It's updated pretty often, so it's a good resource for when you're looking for postdoc jobs or fellowship funding. Okay, so how do you contact or introduce yourself to principal investigators or PIs? So you can get introductions from your supervisors. It can be helpful to speak with your supervisor about your future plans because they may be able to help. Obviously, I'm aware that not everyone would feel comfortable talking about these things with supervisors, but your supervisors are likely to have widespread networks. If you know your supervisor has a contact with a lab that you may be interested in, you can always ask for them to introduce you at a conference or via an email, and then you can take the reins. This way, it can alleviate some of the pressure or nerves of introducing yourself to new PIs. Okay, so when using email, one of the best ways to contact potential PIs is through email. In a short email, tell them that you're coming to the end of your PhD, give them a brief idea of when you will be done, tell them why you're interested in their lab, what skills you could bring to their group, or what you want to learn from their group, and make sure to attach an updated CV. It can also be helpful to suggest to set up a short meeting to discuss these things in more detail. Okay, so what about at conferences? Well, conferences are also fantastic places to develop connections and find potential postdoc jobs. So it's great if you get the opportunity to go to a national or international conference in your final year of your PhD. When presenting your work, make sure to introduce yourself to your audience, ask about their role and where they do their research. A tip is to write down the contact details of people and to email them when you return. Many PIs will also be at these conferences looking for potential new group members. So, if you know of a potential PI going to a conference, seek them out, attend their talk or their poster session. I was lucky enough to meet many PIs at my first ever Alzheimer's Association International Conference, and I definitely developed some good networking by being there. So conferences in your final year can be super helpful for those postdoc job opportunities. So, well, what happens next? Well, this is where things are not as easy to write about because funding in academia is so different across the world. From my experience in the UK, if you see a postdoc job and apply for it and you're selected for interview, then you go to your interview, which is pretty much like a PhD interview. But if you're interested in a lab in the USA, then it may be that the lab has no advert for a specific job. But if you are interested, it may be that the PI does have money for you. And this is why it's so important to contact potential labs, even if they are not currently advertising for postdoc positions. If the lab is interested in having you as a postdoc, they may be able to invite you to visit the lab, give a talk, meet lab members, and then have an interview to see if you like the environment or to see if it would be a good fit. So there really is no one way of finding a postdoc job. However, my take-home message would be to contact PIs early, to look out for opportunities on Twitter, and to network at conferences.
Thank you for listening. Join the Dementia Research bloggers and share your own views.